Welcome back. I know that we don't normally do 3 videos in a week, but this one I promise is going to be relatively short. And what you need for this particular video is simply to print out the map that is posted on Moodle. And by filling out this map of the Mediterranean world, it's going to serve as kind of an orientation guide to the rest of the book of Acts. Because the rest of the book of Acts focuses on Paul and his travels. And I think it's helpful to imagine the map to see where Paul goes, and it also keeps things in order for us. If I know what happens where, then I'll be able to answer those questions correctly on the quiz, and more importantly, I'll know something about the book of Acts and retain it longer. So if you want to pause and go ahead and get that map printed out, it's going to look something like this. And of course, as you want to lay it out, you want to lay it out with Italy, the boot, of course, in the upper right hand or left hand corner, excuse me. It's always backwards when I'm doing this. All right, so let's go to the PowerPoint so that we can go ahead and get this filled out. And all we're calling this here is simply an orientation of the Mediterranean world. Now I'm going to enlarge my picture here so I can talk to you and see if we can do 2 things at once, and it's easier to understand. So let me stand up. All right, so here's the map, and so we're going to start labeling. And the way we're going to label is starting over here, opposite from Italy. And you see A right there, do you not? No, you can't sit there. There you go. All right, you can see A right there, that's Jerusalem. B is Caesarea. C is Antioch. And then we go here to this island in the Mediterranean Sea, and that's Cyprus. Okay? Now we go back up to E. This is Tarsus. This is where Paul is from. And then F is Galatia. This is the area of Galatia. And of course, there you see the cities listed there, Iconium, Lystra, and Derbe. And then we go all the way over here to G. You see G right there? I'm sorry, I'm tilting. G is Troas. So be sure that you don't get Troas and Tarsus confused. Now let me see if I can move this. Shoot. There we go. Move this picture over, back up. And I'm on the other side now. They don't teach these skills in seminary, you know that? So let's go to H. So from Troas, we're going to H, Philippi, I, Thessaloniki, J, Athens, K, Corinth, and then straight across over to L, which is Ephesus. And then we have this little smudge over here, M, Malta, and then up here in Rome, in Italy, in N. Okay? So again, if you need to rewind this a little bit and get those things done, feel free to do so. Now what I'm going to do, let me reduce my picture. What I'm going to do here is simply walk us through the story of Paul using the map. And if you can do this by yourself, you will have mastered this material. And you have a very convenient way of keeping this material before you in your head and less likely to get confused. So again, this is an overview of what we're going to go over in the next 2 video lectures. So let's go. Where the action starts in Antioch. You remember from the last video, Paul and Barnabas are serving as co-pastors of the church in Antioch. So that's item C on your map. And the Holy Spirit again moves and sets Barnabas and Paul apart for the ministry. And so off they go. The first place they go is to Cyprus. Remember, this is where Barnabas is from. And then they make their way and dock at Perga in Pamphylia, and then make their way to Antioch. Now, this is a second Antioch. This is Antioch of Pisidia, and we don't need to worry about it. And then he makes his way here into the Galatian area, and there you see the 3 cities of Iconium, Lystra, and Derbe. They return back to Antioch. Now, what's important in this particular first event is what happens when they dock at Perga. There's more people traveling with Paul than just Barnabas. One of the people is John Mark. We learned that John Mark is not only a cousin of Barnabas, but we also come to believe later that he is the author of the Gospel of Mark. So that comes into play later, but at Perga, he abandons the group and goes back home to Jerusalem. So they return to they return to Antioch and give a report of their travels and their journey. Now we come to a crucial chapter in the book of Acts, which is Acts 15. And in Acts 15, because of this issue about how does one become a follower of Jesus, do you have to become Jewish first? They make their way to Jerusalem for a conference, and this is called simply the Jerusalem Conference. They come back to Antioch, and on the way back to Antioch, Paul and Barnabas talk, and Paul is interested in embarking on the trip that they had gone on before, and Barnabas wants to get John Mark and bring him along. Paul says absolutely not, and they have a pretty big dispute, big enough that they split. So Barnabas and John Mark go to Cyprus, and now Paul has another traveling companion named Silas. So now it's Paul and Silas. They leave Antioch, go to Tarsus, where Paul is from. They revisit the cities here in Galatia, and here they pick up Timothy. And they move from this area to Troas, and here in Troas, Paul experiences what is known as the Macedonian call. It is clear, and you can see the arrow here, that from the text, that Paul wanted to move along the coastal towns here in what we know today as northern Turkey, and of course that was Asia at that period in time. But no, the call to in Troas was come west. So west they go, and they end up in Philippi. There's three events that occur in Philippi. We have the conversion of Lydia. We have the incident with the slave girl who is excised from her demons. And then we have the jailing of Paul and Silas, and ultimately the conversion of the Philippian jailer. From there, they make their way to Thessaloniki. And again, there's dissension here in Thessaloniki soon after they begin their ministry there. And Paul has to leave. Paul makes his way to Berea and then makes his way down to Athens. Silas and Paul stay. And of course, then they join Paul later in Athens. Then they kind of settle here in Corinth. In Corinth, they're here for approximately 2 years. Here we meet Aquila and Priscilla. And I think you're beginning to understand now, as Paul leaves these places, he's still in communication with them, and he writes letters. So hence, we have the letter to the Philippians, to those in Philippi, the letter to Galatians, those churches that were established in Galatia, the letter to the Thessalonians, the letter to the Corinthians. After a couple of years in Corinth, they make their way over to Ephesus, and they have about a 3-year ministry there, and that ministry is brought to an end by a riot. Now, one of the things that is clear in 2 Corinthians, for example, and in other places in Paul's letters, but for some reason Luke does not make a big deal out of it, is that one of the things that Paul has been doing is doing a collection. He's been collecting money for the church in Jerusalem. So when the work in Ephesus came to an end, Paul is bent on going to Jerusalem to deliver the money. He is encouraged not to go because there are still people out who want to get him, but he is believing that he needs to go to Jerusalem. He does. And of course, what happens is there's another riot, which ultimately results in Paul being arrested. And there he is sent to Caesarea, where he is imprisoned there for 2 years. And then he, as a Roman citizen, appeals to Rome. And so he's put on a ship, and we don't need to worry about all these stops the ship makes. This probably means the squiggly line that there was a storm, and they're shipwrecked on the island of Malta. They stayed there for about 6 months, and then Paul ends up in Rome, where the book of Acts ends. So there you go. There's kind of the overview highlighting some of the events that occur. And so if you can begin thinking and acquainting yourself with the map and moving forward in that regard, I think you'll be in good shape for the material we're going to cover. And hope you have a good rest of the week, and I'll look forward to seeing you as we continue our study of Acts. You take care now.